both from a culture perspective, as well as a business transformation. And I think the thing that I love so much about Michelle, and that so many others do as well, is that she's so people focused and is so committed to helping people grow and develop in their journey, and really includes them in the cultural transformation that she helps. So she's always inspiring me. She's one of those people that it's like, if you want to get something done, give it to the busiest person, right? And in her spare time, Michelle is also she served on the board of the Pediatric Cancer Foundation. She has actually for years hand delivered food to people who are homebound, and also is leading a fundraiser for a local restaurant in her town that employs adults with intellectual disabilities. So in a nutshell, Michelle is someone who knows how to get things done and has a huge, huge heart, which makes her the perfect person to then interview Claude Silver. So Claude Silver, if you are not following her on any number of Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter or any other way you can get her, I highly recommend it. Claude, the minute I met her, blew me away with her oversized heart. And when I say that, and Claude is the Chief Heart Officer of VaynerMedia. And VaynerMedia is a digital agency, and they work with tons of clients like Dove and Spotify and GE and PepsiCo, small companies you might have heard of. She is Gary Vaynerchuk's right-hand person, and he's the CEO. And Claude is really the first person that I've ever known that's had the title of Chief Heart Officer. One thing that she says about that is a quote from her is that she is in touch in that role, and she's going to tell you more about what that role really means. She's in touch with the heartbeat of every person in that 750 person company, and she is. She knows her people, she cares about them, she helps them grow and develop. She is incredibly committed to making a difference in the world. So I'm so excited to introduce you to both Michelle and Claude. Enjoy, ladies.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Dana. I hope I live up to that description. That was very overwhelming. I'm having technical difficulties. That was going to happen. I've had no internet problems all day until 5 minutes before this call started. So I'm looking at you on my phone, but I can't see any of you. So hopefully I'll get internet coverage in a few minutes or before this ends so I can see you. And I could also see some of the questions. Otherwise, Diane and I will have to be creative. But I want to start by saying that I'm viewing, every day should be a gift, right? And we should look at it as a gift, but it's hard these days because life is hard and we're dealing with a lot. But I got up today and it's the first day of autumn. It's a spectacular weather day in the New York, New Jersey area. And I get to be with the women of the Quorum Initiative and some guests who are just amazing women who do so much to support one another. And partnering them with the inspiring Claude Silver, who has really made a mission of bringing empathy back, making it cool, and treating people like humans and leading from the heart. So today, two worlds collide, great worlds collide, and I think we'll all be better off for it when this hour is over. And I'm so looking forward to talking with Claude and hearing some of the things she's got to say. I'm going to take notes so I can be better myself and create better impact as a leader. And I hope you all feel the same way. So thank you for asking me to do this. And this is really a gift, and it's going to be, I know, the best part of my week. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Claude, let me just go with the probably the most common question you get, which is, what was the motivation for your boss, Gary Vaynerchuk, to bring you back to Vayner to create a chief heart officer role, and how did he think that that would be different from the traditional chief HR officer's roles as we know it?
Great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Just so you know, my little 23-month-old might make an appearance. So just as an FYI. So we'll see. Anyway, I was at VaynerMedia for 16 months before we created this role. And we didn't have an HR department really. We had a couple recruiters, we had someone doing benefits, and I was hired as the first senior vice president, and I was overseeing the Unilever account. I went to Gary on my 1-year Vaynerversary, and I said, "This is great. You're the greatest. I love this place." You know, I'd been at many advertising agencies by that point, but I'm done with advertising. He said, all right, well, what do you want to do? And I said, "I only care about the heartbeat of this place. I only care about the people." And he said, "Cool, okay, I need you to stay in this job 18 more months. And I said, "I don't have 18 more months. I'll give you 6 months." Upon the 6 months, it was like 6 months and 3 days, I actually went in and I resigned. I had found a backfill in the meantime for myself, and I resigned. And when we were having this discussion, I said, I told you, like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to do advertising anymore. I really just want to be with people. Maybe I'll start my own coaching practice, go back, finish my degree in psychotherapy, so forth and so on. And he said, "Well, I think we should create the chief heart officer role." And I said, "Okay, well, call me when you're ready." And 4 months later, he did call me. We had breakfast, and he said, "Great, you're coming back. You're going to be the chief heart officer." Now, the reason we use the word heart, first of all, I said I only care about the heartbeat of this place. But the thing that Gary and I were in lockstep on the minute we met, which was September of 2013, was that we didn't see humans as employees. We don't use the word employees. We really just saw people as just being humans and hearts. And so the way that we dissected that was, every single human has an operating system called a heart, and every company uses and works with humans, which is what keeps companies going. So that's really what it was. And he's a great branding person. And so chief heart officer, I think, sounded good to him. It's very different than a CHRO. It's different than a chief people officer. I think it's a mixture of chief people, inspiration, culture, chief operations officer, therapist sometimes. So it's really coach. I mean, it really encompasses anything and everything that has to do with people and their experience within our four walls, and quite frankly, after.
What do you mean by after?
So when we know that someone is, that we might have to say goodbye to someone, or when someone chooses to leave our company, but especially when someone, when we know we need to let someone go, prior to doing that, we will, in the background, set up 2 to 3 different places that they could go at least have a conversation with. So for example, if you are a video editor and we, because of COVID, we're not doing any video right now, or whatever it is, we will set you up with at least networking opportunities at perhaps Vox or HBO or so forth and so on. So that is our commitment. We also have something called an alumni network. So say you are a CMO and you are looking for a social media manager, and you write Gary because he's in your network, I've probably got 7 people that I can recommend. So we want to keep people in our ecosystem forever. We might not have a home for them at Vayner specifically, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to bump into them again when they go to WeWork, or when they go to Budweiser, or when they go to Chase, because we will, because we have the good fortune of working with a lot of well-known brands and even smaller brands. So it is a small world when you really get down to it.
Well, I love that. And I say a lot, like how you offboard someone is just as important as how you onboard them. And when you're making really difficult decisions like that to say goodbye, we all know as leaders, it gets uncomfortable, right? And we don't want it to be uncomfortable. So I think by you taking that approach, I love the alumni network. I love you helping folks with that, but it really keeps to treating the person as a human. And they may not have a job with you, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't work someplace else. So I totally love that. And let me ask, since having you back and looking at, has HR, even though we don't want to view it as total HR, but has the credibility of a function, because the function suffers a bit, right? People
Yeah.
view it as sort of the big brother, compliance, all this, but
Yeah.
has this new format really had a different kind of impact on the organization and the staff? And how do you measure that?
I love the question because I'm coming straight from an example. So my 11 to 12 was, I was doing a mediation session between 3 people on one account. There were 2 creatives and 1 account person, and they have been at odds with each other. What I said to them when I entered the conversation was, this is not an HR conversation. This is a human conversation. This is not going to the principal's office, anything like that. This is a human conversation based on emotions. I'm going to ask you to be extremely honest. And there we went. So to answer your question, we have hired, because I didn't come from the world of HR, I really needed to hire a team around me that knew the science and the art of human resources, which I've now learned. But I've hired some phenomenal people around me because we want to have strong people around us. And those people in many ways scale me. Yes, are they taking care of people in terms of EEOC or compliance? Yes, they are, in a different way that I am. But what I definitely feel is though, the organization knows that they not only have their HR business partners, but they have me to come to, and I'm going to be Switzerland. I am going to be Switzerland. I mean, I can read you the notes from when I just entered in this conversation at 11 o'clock, which is, it's not about right or wrong. The goal is getting better at communicating so we can get better at the work. This is a safe space. There's freedom here, that kind of stuff, because that's so important, because we're humans. And the fact that we continue to go into the workplace feeling like we need to put armor on and get booted and suited it's not a workplace I want to be in anymore. I believe that there are other ways to be, and that takes a heck of a lot of courage and vulnerability and self-awareness from each and every one of us, especially as leaders, to get real and to go to people rather than expecting them to always to come to us, to reach out to people, to build the bridge, to lend a hand, to be someone's safe space.
No, that's great. There's so many times in organizations that leaders don't have the support of their manager to behave that way, right? It's a number or it's this. Any words of advice to how to build that bridge for somebody? Because when it's the right thing to do, you want to fight harder. Every leader does, but you get met with resistance. And how far do you pick a battle?
The way I answer that question is, you know who you are. You know your hearts. Every single person on this call is here for a reason, because there are some like minds here. There are some heart leaders here. There are some empaths here. I know it's very difficult when you come up against that brick wall and there's a no, but there's so much that can happen before you get that no. There's so much mentorship. There's so much TLC and empathy that one can offer people before you get to that no. So, in today's day and age, there are people, look, everyone is reading the same HBR articles that I am in Inc. and hearing that this is the time for leaders to lean in, and this is the time for leaders to show more empathy and more vulnerability. And there are also going to be leaders who are fixated on that bottom or top line because they need to keep the lights on. And I understand that, and there's no harm, no foul, but the way you're going to retain people and the way you're going to retain your high performance is to lean in and listen to them. And that means listening to your HR people or your leaders or your people managers when they come to you and they say, look, I have data. We've been conducting courageous conversations over here for the last 6 months, or we've been having conversations around Black Lives Matter for the last 6 months. And this is actually the data I have. We have, not only do we have more engaged employees, or we've retained more employees, we have more internal references. We're, that kind of stuff, word of mouth referrals. I mean, leaders are going to want to know, going to want to have some kind of quant and qual in order to say yes. But there's so much you can do before that meeting. There really is.
Well, I think armed with data, right? Armed with facts, armed with input from others, and I think with a general intent um, to have your boss look best when this all comes out, right? It really helps everybody else. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You care about their reputation as well. So all these things add to that, I guess, without making it about them. But sometimes, do we have to make it about them?
Sometimes. Well, it depends on whose name's on the door and who's signing your check, right?
Totally, totally. In following you on social media and knowing you a little bit, I know you as a person and a leader to be a good listener, to be an empath, to be in tune to how you're making others feel, right? To be vulnerable, to be human, what we're talking about. So with all that's happened this year, I think we've all grown in some way. What skills and changes have you added to your toolkit that's enabled you to lead people differently, more effectively? Even though we're trying this as we go along,
Yeah.
can you point to anything that sticks out that you really feel you've developed and changed yourself about or added to it?
Yeah, I love the question because like every single person here and everywhere, like I'm always learning, I'm constantly learning. And because there was no toolkit for any of us as we walked into COVID or Black Lives Matter or the riots or whatever's going to happen next, we've all been in triage mode. And so in triage mode, you're fast and furious and you're just trying to plug the holes. After we got out of triage mode, we got into kind of we were able to sustain, and now we're kind of transforming our entire culture. But some of the things that really were learning moments for me, and it was to be extremely transparent with my communication. And now it's not that I wasn't, however, there are certain times and places that I really have had to kind of keep things a little bit closer to my chest for the sake or the safety of the company, or because we weren't ready to make certain decisions, because everyone needed to know what was going on, whether or not we were working from home, when we were coming back, what we were doing with our working parents. I've had to really get very, very honest with anytime I'm chickening out. So anytime I'm a chicken, I have to call myself out on it. And by the way, I know when I'm a chicken. We all know when we're chicken. Now I have to go that much further to take a risk. And so that's been a big one. It's been a real big one for me. And in fact, just on this phone call that I just had, a few minutes ago, really asking the three gentlemen that I was with to get real about their emotions. Get real. Like, we are only here once. There is no reason for this. Was a very expensive phone call, very expensive Zoom. Like, we got to get real here, because we got to find some solutions here, because we got to get onto the work. So that kind of stuff is really important for me. So transparent communication, calling myself out. And I will tell you, the biggest one for me was incredibly humbling, and one that I think will stay with me forever. For a very long time, I had been saying, we are creating a psychologically safe culture here where people feel like they belong and they can bring their whole self. Well, as soon as the riots happened and Black Lives Matter happened, and I sat around with our Black and Brown communities for quite a bit, someone that I have known at Vayner, who's been there for 8.5 years, I've been there 6.5, came up to me, or said to me on the Zoom, she said, I want to tell you something. She's a Black woman. She said, I want to tell you something. I've never been able to bring my whole self to work, and I need you to know that. And then she went into explaining it and code switching and all the things that we've been learning. And, it was incredibly humbling, because I didn't quite realize that. I didn't quite recognize what it was like every single day. So if you have, for example, if you are LGBTQ, that is not something that your skin color is going to portray necessarily. If you are, working through a a seen or unseen disability. That is not necessarily something that your skin is going to portray. So this was a really big eye-opener for me. So I went on on that answer, but it's been a wild ride in 2020, and we ain't over yet. So I'm sure there's more things I'm going to learn.
Oh, for sure. And I'm sure everyone on this call could probably add a few things, but these resonate, I'm sure, with everyone. And I think about sort of the self-awareness key, and I take it back to you talking to three men and telling them to get their emotions in check, which has got to be hard for a woman to tell three expensive men, right, for a call. I'm imagining there's ego involved in there. So how has this role allowed you to do that and feeling comfortable doing that too? Because that's something that we talk about women, that's not something they are naturally comfortable doing. Particularly being the only woman on a call, is to call out three men and say, touch with your emotions.
Yeah, exactly. So I think first and foremost, I worked with a phenomenal CEO who has blessed this role and has blessed me in the role. My role, my job description continues to be the same as it was the day that we decided on this, which is to touch every single human being and infuse the agency with empathy. So that's my job description. I have to figure out how I'm going to do that every single day and every single meeting. The role is also created to scale him, which is really scaling the unscalable. Gary, my CEO is, he's a wizard, quite frankly, in many ways. He's very intuitive. So because I've had that blessing and that nod from him, I don't have to walk into rooms fearful. People know why I'm there, and they've had enough experience with me now over the course of their tenureship, whether or not they're 30 days in or they're 8 years in, to know that my aim is true, and I'm here. I want VaynerMedia to be their best career decision that they've ever made. And I will do anything I possibly can at scale to make that happen. And that means I'm going to call people out in a heartful way when I need to. I'm going to give people feedback when that is what is required, or observations, and I'm going to do it from my heart and from a way in which I think people will be able to hear it.
No, that's great. And I know enough from following you and talking with you that you view, as many people do, I think it's called, but maybe not the recipient, that feedback is a gift. And when you don't give it with the intent of helping and goodness and growth and investment in someone, it's just mean-spirited, right? It's really having the intention to give it, to grow and see the best in everyone.
Yes.
And it sounds like that's the environment you've been able to create in this role over the last few years that would allow you to do something like that, to be able to be yourself, be honest, be direct, but with care and heart.
Absolutely, Michelle. I mean, I think, the way, if you think about it, the way we all are working through our unconscious bias right now, especially right now, right? The way we see someone is really the way we're going to treat them. And the way that we treat them as a human is actually what they will become. And we will influence that. We will influence other people to treat them that way, to see them that way. And so I want to spend my days seeing people in their best light, just like I want someone to see me in my best light, warts and all. And so, going into that conversation with these three gentlemen, like I see them exactly in a great light, with improvements to be made, myself included. And I am open for business. They can come and Slack me, text me, call me and say that didn't work. I want to know.
Great, thank you. Well, I'm going to switch now to sort of the mission of the Quorum, which really focuses on advancing women by taking actions for ourselves, for others, for the community at large, for the broader community, to affect change and create change. I know Meg will talk about that later in the call too. But what action for impact are you most focused on right now? And what would you recommend for the women on this call?
Yeah. Um, the action for impact is making sure that our voices are heard. And I know that that is sometimes, something that is rooted in fairy dust and hard for some of us, especially when we chicken out, when we feel imposter syndrome or inferior, or we're in these rooms where we might be the only female. And it is difficult, I think, at times for us to feel as though our voices have some kind of gravitas. And it is up to us, I think, as a community to make these changes and to elevate one another and to be voice for the voiceless. And so that's one of the things that I'm incredibly devoted to right now, especially when it comes to DE&I. Also, it is the only thing I'm paying attention to. Really, is how are we creating a place where how are we creating an inclusive space? And there's so much that goes into creating an inclusive space, and it is not just the obvious. I think of diversity in a very holistic way. And part of that is by, making sure that people feel as though they can use their voice. And so what is the training that we can offer, certainly our females, to find and use their voices? And so we've brought in a lot of coaching as of late. Starting in April, we started working with an executive coaching program. We're also working with a consultant that has been talking to us in groups on Zooms like this about not saying sorry, those types of things. So we got to stick together here. We got to stick together and root each other on. And that's why an organization like this is so important and impactful. Obviously, the intent is to have us all rise and be heard and to get more of us into those rooms. So it's incredibly important to me.
No, love that, and love that you gave a couple of examples of what you're doing. And this is what Quorum's about. And I have to say, I always do this pitch for it, because when I come here, it's really the first group of women that I have never come to a meeting where I haven't found someone open and welcoming and supportive, and how do I help, and how do I build, and how do I encourage, and non-judgment. And I'm thinking, wow, how do we bottle all of this and be able to get it off into every organization so we're all feeling the same thing and we're all doing the same thing. So some of those organizations that are harder to do that in, and I can see things in all the places I've worked where women don't always support women. Have you done sponsorship programs? Have you done mentorship programs that sort of pair a woman with a woman, or a man who actually gets women, and much like Gary with you, but
yeah,
things like that people can walk away with and say, maybe that'll work here.
So I love that you brought that up. So our women's group is called Women in Business. And we started a program 2 years ago now, almost 2 years, called the Championship Program. It's a mentorship program where women are mentoring women. So senior women are mentoring less experienced women, and women are mentoring men. It is not men mentoring women. So it is women led. And this is an area in which men, young men, senior men, are being mentored by women. And it's fantastic. And it's got a lot of legs right now.
That's amazing. And your demographic, I've been to your office once, so it's millennial based, right?
Yeah.
So for the most part, have you been able to teach a couple of old dogs some new tricks with that, knowing that different generations behave differently? And
yeah, I mean, we have, we're multi-generational. While we skew more on the probably younger millennial, and then the top end of millennials, I would say. There's 4 different generations in our space right now. And so, watching, I mean, it's humbling, right? It's humbling to have a gentleman be mentored by a woman. It's extremely humbling. And I see it happening actually cross offices. So I see it a lot happening from New York to LA and New York to London in those offices right now. And I've gotten some great notes on how it's been working really well. I think, especially, I think some of the men have found a lot of gifts from females in the media department, especially because that's a skill that older generations really need to know right now.
Fantastic. Diane, I'll leave it for you because I haven't opened up the chat, but I see 2 messages in there. So if there's a question there, I'll ask Claude one more question, and then we can open it to this, and I have others to ask, but I'll just do this. When we look at the common traits you had as a business strategist and then transferred over to this new role, you know, what was the hardest part for you? Going to a different function where you're coming from advertising, what you're focused on, and growing business and selling product and all that.
Yeah,
I think transition.
I think personally the biggest was no longer being close to the creative work. You know, I'm not close at all to the creative work now. I get to see it just as anyone else would get to see it in a newsletter or if it goes live. I love the reason that I was in agencies for so long is that I love being around creatives. I really do. As a strategist, I could understand the blueprints for something, but bringing something to life, an idea to life in a video or in a storyboard or in a piece of copy is something that was so much fun for me. Really being a part of it, rolling up my sleeves and stuff. So I missed that a lot. I think in terms of just making the pivot itself, the human behavior is human behavior is human behavior. So I've always been in that and in that world, and that wasn't difficult for me. That was just like, oh, this is what I'm going to do full time, 24/7, 365.
Great. And I'll just ask, because listening to people, no matter what, when you're a leader, when people have hard times or difficult times or conflict, whatever, it's exhausting at times, right? Dealing with some of these issues. It's draining when you add on everything else. What do you do for self-care for yourself so you are able to bring the best of you there while still knowing you have things going on in your life too? Because I think people forget that about leaders, that we have things going on too. We're trying to be there for everyone. So what could you give for tips of self-care that might work for you, that might work for everyone else here?
Yeah, self-care is enormously important. I think, someone told me when I started this job that I was going to need to empty my bucket every single day. And they were right, because I'm taking on quite a bit of, I'm holding a lot of emotion. I do my best not to take it on because that's not going to be any good for anyone. And so the only ways I can do that right now are making sure that I'm stopping work at a certain time and spending time with my family and my daughter. It's really important. When I have the opportunity to cook, that's something that's very creative for me. Getting enough sleep is important. Doing breathing exercises, just little stuff, because I know that if I put something big on my plate and then I don't do it, I'll let myself down. And then that just kind of like defeats the purpose of being good to myself. Mm-hmm. So just little milestones here and there, and really making sure that I have enough time to really just breathe and like step outside and get some fresh air. Yesterday I just sat outside for like 5 minutes and just like felt the sun, and those types of things are really important to me, because I'm dealing with them, with humans, and we're exquisitely messy, and myself included. So taking time out and doing something that fills me up is really important right now. My child does that.
Right. Well, that's a wonderful part of life. So having your little girl there, and hopefully everyone is doing something for self-care, and that resonated with all of you. I aim to get better at it, but so I can give more to others, but it's a work in progress. We have a couple of questions here. It says, this is from a day or Nana. Nana. Okay, thank you. Do you want to ask your question, actually? Go ahead.
Oh, actually, this is Diane. I was
Oh,
reading the
I'm sorry. Oh, read it.
Michelle, thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to ask it. Thank you.
Great.
And Claude, thank you so much. This has been extremely helpful and just refreshing to hear that this is how the company's being run. So just two things for me. One, I loved your comment about being like Switzerland and kind of creating that safe space for resolution of conflict, which I think is pretty interesting. And so I just wondered from your 11 o'clock, like how'd that get resolved, and how did people feel about that whole concept? Because I think, to your point, we do kind of get a little bit armored up to go to work, and everyone's sort of expecting something, something very definitive. And the environment that you described was really fluid. And so I'm just curious how people react to that. And then just my second question is just around feedback.
Yep.
We see a lot of, environments where feedback kind of goes off the rails.
Yeah.
Even though the good intent is to get.
Yeah. So thank you for the question, by the way. And I was reading them too. So, which is helpful. So, how did the issues in my 11 a.m. get resolved? They didn't yet. We're going to have a second meeting. I think we started, to Michelle's point, a little while ago, here I am in a room with three male leaders, and I'm talking about getting real about their emotions. And prior to that minute, when I said that, they were all, well, the facts are, well, the facts are, well, the facts are. And I finally said, like, that's great about the facts. But what I heard this person say is his feelings are actually hurt. So I need someone here to validate that. And so that's actually where we left off. I said, if I have a nod of agreement, great, we're going to have a 45-minute meeting next. If not, like, nod like that. I got a nod that way. But what I could tell is there was a softening in at least their body language and the way that they were addressing the one person that was bringing, quite frankly, microaggression claims and hostile work environment claims towards these other two. So you said it so well. It is a very fluid process because we are humans, and unless it's black and white and we're talking about a harassment issue, or we're talking about a real infringement here. When we're talking about feelings, it's very difficult. So there is going to be, I'm going to have another meeting, and there's going to be follow-up, and there's going to be touching base, and it's going to be a lot of time and energy, but getting to a place where I know that we can put this over here. It's okay. It's not going to blow up. There's not going to be any kind of volcanic eruption. And then what they don't know is we'll make some moves on that team, because quite frankly, they're not going to be able to work together. That I know. Once someone says, you've created a hostile work environment for me, I mean, I can't go, I'm not, and then he took it back. So we're in a, anyway, but to answer the question, it is very fluid, but I will be touching base. Feedback. So I really like Kim Scott's radical candor and the way that she goes about defining feedback in terms of, the steps in terms of in giving feedback are be kind, be clear, be specific, be actionable, and then follow up. So kind, clear, specific. I mean, kind we can do, right? Clear and specific are not just like, hey, that was great, or you could have done better, but get into the meat of it, like what could have been better. And then of course the action items and because, I saw you presenting in that presentation to the clients, and I noticed every single time you said, or you got nervous, the clients looked down at their phone and we lost their attention. So the action item is, we're going to practice together, and I'm going to film you. I'll follow up with you every 2 weeks, something like that. So we do a lot of feedback training. That is what I will say. And we've done it I just kind of Vaynerized radical candor, and we do a lot of role playing. And it's really funny, people really enjoy it. It's kind of like I get them up on stage. And of course, this is when we were in an office, and it's like a little Saturday Night Live skits. But it's a muscle that we have to flex over and over and over again. And if I can't do it, they can't do it. Like if I can't set a good example, or Gary can't set a good example, then we can't expect anyone to be great at it. So we've had to get much better at it. And being that we're both empaths, it's been something we've had to really hold each other accountable for. he will say to me every now and then, I need you to show some teeth, you know? And what he means is like, be honest. Don't let them get away with that, you know? Thanks for the questions.
Thank you. Dana has a question. Dana Galen, I think that's you. Who put that in there?
That's me. That's me.
Okay.
And I know, Claude, you can see this too. I'm really just curious. I know you have many superpowers, and I'm wondering what's the one that you enjoy using the most, and how does it show up?
I'm gonna say intuition, for sure. So for me, you know, intuition, it's a gut, you know, it's a feeling that you have, and the way I've honed mine over the years is really, it's pattern recognition. I have to say, it's just by being able to obviously feel the texture of things, and collect enough information that I'm able to repetitively see patterns in behaviors, in relationships, so forth and so on. So I would say just intuition, and just knowing when I know. And that doesn't mean my way is the highway. It just is a great guide for me.
Yeah, it's interesting that you were a strategist, you know, makes a lot of sense that now you're employing that superpower in a different way with people as well.
1000%. And that's what like we said, strategy is all about. For me, it was the study of human behavior, and, you know, gleaning the insights, how I could, at the end of the day, it was how I could get more people to buy toothpaste, let's be honest. But all of the good stuff in between that point of sale, that's what I loved. The behavior, what is a mom in Turkey really dealing with? Why does she care about the welfare of her kids' oral health? I mean, to get real scientific about it, but so yeah, intuition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I don't see any other written questions. Oh, something's coming in. Maybe. Okay. Nope.
This
I
is
have a
Meg.
question here. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Meg.
Yeah, Claude, thanks so much for all your comments. They're so rich. One of the ones I wanted to grab for a minute was the notion about raising women's voices. How are you going about doing that, do you think, or what have you seen that's been most effective in helping women raise their voice?
I go back to role playing all the time, because it's a practical way to practice. And without the practice, let me rephrase that. Without accountability and the practice, I think it's a dream. You know, I know one day I will, or my next time I'm in that meeting, I will. But I think we need to hold each other accountable to actually practicing what that's like to take up space and to be big in the room, because it sounds great, but at the end of the day, it can be a little bit intimidating. So that's one of the things that this Women in Business group does together. And it's really, we've had a lot of success, I would say more success on screen than in the rooms. Because this is, by the way, you know, we all are, one of the things I love about the Zoom is that we all take up the same size box. So there's some kind of, there's some kind of equality in it. And I find, for whatever reason, it is a little bit easier for people to use their voice. So we are doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
I have one question that came in, and it's an anonymous question. There are so many intense feelings around politics and race, which is making it hard for us to have conversations with colleagues. I personally have never felt so scared in my life to speak my mind. What's your advice on how to deal with walking on eggshells all day and all night long?
You know, I consider that the same type of crime to oneself as the Sunday scaries. You know, I think there's a real issue to be talked about if someone has Sunday scaries. What are they so afraid of? Like, what is happening when they walk into that door that next day on Monday or go onto the screen? And I think that's the same thing as walking on eggshells in many ways, which is a crime to oneself, not feeling like they can take up space, you know, feeling as though either potentially they might be more outspoken than the normal Jane, you know, or Sally, which they might feel like they might get in trouble that way, or they're a wallflower, which isn't going to make them feel good. So this idea of limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome, I think, is something that we really need to spend an enormous amount of time on in the context of DE&I right now. Remembering that not every single person is equal. And that was the learning for me, which was not every single person is walking into that room or getting on to a Zoom feeling like they belong, you know. And so with that in mind, and then if I use that as my lens and kind of try to reverse engineer that, like, how am I myself and how am I training other people to walk into Zoom so that they can hold space and then they can treat people, they can be as vulnerable as I'm asking other people to be. And I'm talking about leaders in particular. So I put a lot of responsibilities on leaders right now, male and female leaders alike, to lean in and to show to show who they are, to be authentic. This is an incredible time, as hard of a time as we've all been having right now. I think there's an incredible opportunity for evolution here, for the evolution of who you are, for the evolution of who the company is. You know, who do you want to be? Because at some point we are going to pop out of this, and we have the opportunity to be different, better, stronger. We have the opportunity to shed our skin, just as this world seems to be shedding its skin as well, in many ways.
No, beautiful. Well said. Thank you. And I hope that answered that person's question. Before we wrap and we turn to Meg, because I know she closes things, and I want to make sure I don't take up too much time on that. But people are going to walk away today having listened to your type of, you know, how you lead, hopefully feel inspired, because I just think being yourself is inspiring, and having people's best interests at heart is inspiring. And if that's where we come from, that space all the time, how can things not get better? Mm-hmm. So what piece of advice would you give someone today to walk away with that, you know, if they take one thing from this conversation, you know, what would it be as it relates to how they lead, how they support women, how they grow, how they inspire, how they keep the human at the core of everything? Yeah.
The thing I will say until my last breath, I think, is remembering that everything we do is leaving our own kind of fingerprint or heartprint on another person. So how do you want to leave them? You want to leave them feeling better about themselves, that there's more possibility and opportunity. You want to feel them feeling seen, heard, validated, respected. I say that because we are just like every single other person. My skin, I bleed red just like everyone else. I have emotions just like everyone else. And when I think we forget that we are dealing with humans just like we are, I think that's when we get ourselves into trouble. So remembering that, like, I want to leave people feeling better than they did prior. And if they already felt super, then let me just be the cherry on top of that cake. And if they felt like mud, then let me bring some sunshine in there. You know, that's what I want to do. So, you know, having a spirit of generosity, or generosity of spirit, however you want to slice and dice that one, and giving of yourself in an authentic way, to me, is the way to bring more tenderness into this world. And that's what we're all about. That's what I'm all about.
Totally love this. So inspiring. And the fact that there's someone like you and others, because I do follow your posse of people on LinkedIn that really have made kindness, putting people focused, people centric, and being nice, cool again. Like you can make difficult decisions by being a good person and being nice and having somebody's best interests at heart. For me, particularly for working as many years as I have and worked through many generations when you didn't do things like that, and there was hierarchy and you didn't bring your whole self to work and you separated personal from business.
Yeah.
To see the world now where everything is blurred and you can't ignore it anymore, and to have leaders like you making it okay to blur those lines
Thank you.
and help people get through it is really super exciting and inspiring to me, and I'm sure others feel the same.
Thank
Megan,
you. Thank you.
we have 5 minutes left. I know you do your call to action, so I want to turn this to you, and thank you for having both Claude and myself here today with you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah. Listen, thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Claude. What a fantastic conversation. There were so many great nuggets, and I feel like it's hard to sum that up. Other than there were a couple things that stuck with me. Claude, it's so inspiring to see that there's an organization that's looking at itself differently, which doesn't mean that it's any less profitable as a business or dynamic and playing its part in the scheme of things, but that it's creating an environment that allows people to really show up and bring their very best of themselves there. So that's super exciting, because I do think business has a ways to go on that front. So it's nice to see a new model, because I think it's an interesting challenge for all of us to consider how much of what we heard about what you're working on is possible in our own environments, and funny enough, probably more than we think, which led me to one of your comments around, how do you be a human leader, which was just such a fascinating notion, bringing that vulnerability to the forefront, you use the word TLC in there, which is just fascinating, because I never hear that in a business environment, so I loved it, so thank you for that. The notion of empathy and even compassion, which is more towards the actual action, so that was really, really amazing in the spirit of generosity. So I loved all of those comments. It's really inspired me to reflect a little bit on my own leadership, and also on how I can bring more heart to everything that I'm doing every day. So that I think is going to be my call to action to all of us today. If nothing else, I think that's something really fascinating to reflect upon. How can we all bring more heart into what we're doing every day? And certainly this is a group of leaders. How do you raise your voice and include your heart in that raising of your voice? So that's really fascinating to me. I loved it. Thank you both so much for leading us in that discussion. Had a couple other quick things in terms of call to action, as Michelle mentioned. So the first one is bringing our heart into our leadership, and how do we take that forward in a new way. We also talk about regularly at Quorum, what other actions can we take, and I just have a couple really simple, quick. The bringing the heart to the work every day is a profound challenge, so I'm really excited about that. But I also wanted to mention a couple other action items for all of us. The first one is I wanted to mention a couple upcoming activities that Quorum has going on, just so that you can mark your calendar. So that's a really easy action item. We have next month on October 14th, a really fantastic, fascinating session with Michelle King, who just left Netflix as the director of inclusion. She's written a book about how you overcome barriers for women at work. She's super dynamic and has an interesting spin on sort of how she looks at the world, about how we help women move forward and evolve. And she's going to spend some time on allyship, which was also something Claude touched on a little in some of the programming that you're doing at Vayner. How do we bring allies along in that process? So I think that'll be a terrific session. That's October 14th, so do not miss it. We also have a session on November 10th. where we're going to be talking about having a discussion with Jay Newton Small, who's also written a book, is a prolific writer, very dynamic speaker. She's really going to talk about women in leadership and politics, which that'll be a very fascinating conversation at that moment, given everything that's going on, at least in the United States in November, early November. And then we have a program on November 18th with Joan Vernikos, who's a NASA scientist. And she's going to talk a little bit about what being a leading woman in NASA looks like, felt like, and where it's going from here. So just mark your calendar for those. I think that'll be a fantastic discussion as well. There's two other really quick things before we all go, because we're right at the top of the hour. If you aren't already following Quorum on LinkedIn, please do so. Diane's been posting some amazing content, and we also would love for you to share anything that you're focused on or seeing that you think the community would be interested in. So keep Diane posted about on that, and definitely follow us on LinkedIn. And for those of you who just joined us for the very first time at Quorum, we would be delighted to have you as an ongoing guest and to have you join us as a digital member. We have some really amazing upcoming content. It's a fantastic community of women leaders who are trying to make a difference, and we would love to have you a part of our community. So that's it. Those are the 4 action items for today. I hope you were as inspired as I was by the discussion between Michelle and Claude. Michelle, you did such a nice job moderating. Thank you for that, even with all your technical difficulties. And and it is so fabulous to see all these faces, or even see the names, and I know the faces behind. So it's amazing to see all of you here today. And please be well and carry your heart into everything you do from here. How about that? Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Be well.
Have a great week, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.